Imagine buying millions of books, not to read them, not to sell them, and not even to preserve them. Instead, you remove their bindings, cut the pages apart, scan every page, turn the books into digital files, and then throw the physical books away. But according to court documents, this is essentially what Anthropic pursued in a secretive initiative called Project Panama. And the story gets even more controversial because at the same time, Anthropic was fighting a major copyright lawsuit over millions of pirated books used in developing Claude. So what exactly happened? Was Anthropic breaking the law, or did it find a loophole in copyright law? What's inside the billion-dollar settlement, and what does this mean for authors, publishers, and the future of AI? Watch till the end to find out all about it. Please subscribe to stay tuned to us. In 2024, Anthropic began what internal documents described as an effort to destructively scan all the books in the world. The project was called Project Panama. According to court filings reported by the Washington Post, Anthropic spent tens of millions of dollars acquiring potentially millions of physical books. Those books were sent through a process in which their bindings were removed and pages were cut and scanned at high speed. The digital text could then become training material for Claude. The physical books were no longer needed. They were discarded or recycled. Why go through all this trouble? Because high-quality books are extremely valuable training data. Books contain long-form writing, structured arguments, factual information, vocabulary, storytelling, and examples of sophisticated human language. Anthropic wanted huge quantities of this kind of material to train their data-hungry AI model. And there was another problem. Getting permission from copyright owners could be slow, expensive, and complicated. The Guardian's Catherine James argues that Project Panama demonstrates a troubling choice. Rather than negotiate with creators, the company could acquire physical copies and transform them into digital training material. But here's where the legal story becomes complicated. Before Project Panama, Anthropic had another source of books: pirated digital collections. Authors Andrea Bartz, Charles Graeber, and Kirk Wallace Johnson sued Anthropic, arguing that the company had obtained copyrighted books from pirate sources and used them in developing Claude. One particularly important source was Library Genesis, commonly known as LibGen. According to the court, Anthropic had accumulated more than 7 million pirated books in what the judge described as a central library. And this distinction became crucial. In June 2025, U.S. District Judge William Alsup made a landmark ruling. He said Anthropic's training of AI models on lawfully acquired copyrighted books could qualify as fair use. In other words, the act of training an AI model on the books was not automatically copyright infringement. Think of it this way. Suppose you legally buy a book. You read it, study it, analyze its writing, and learn from it. Copyright law does not normally give the author control over everything you learn from reading that book. Judge Alsup essentially viewed AI training through a similar transformative use lens. But Anthropic did not get a complete victory. The court ruled that downloading and permanently storing pirated copies of millions of books was copyright infringement. That was a completely different question from whether the books could be used for AI training, and that distinction is extremely important. So the ruling created a fascinating legal boundary. Training on lawfully obtained books could be fair use. Pirating and maintaining millions of unauthorized copies was not, and that distinction would eventually cost Anthropic dearly. A trial was originally scheduled to determine how much Anthropic might owe for the pirated books. The potential damages were enormous. But instead of going through that trial, Anthropic agreed to a settlement worth $1.5 billion. And in July 2026, the federal court gave the settlement final approval. It became the largest known settlement of a U.S. copyright case. The settlement covers approximately hundreds of thousands of copyrighted works, with the gross recovery working out to roughly $3,000 per qualifying work before costs and fees. Anthropic also agreed to destroy the pirated datasets and copies derived from them, subject to legal preservation requirements. What about the books being physically destroyed? Here's the uncomfortable part. The court's ruling does not mean that every book destroyed through Project Panama was illegally destroyed. In fact, the legal reasoning went in the opposite direction. If Anthropic legally purchased a physical copy, scanned it, used the resulting digital material for transformative AI training, and did not create an additional commercial copy for sale, the court found that process could fall within fair use. That doesn't make Project Panama ethically uncontroversial. A rare book is more than the words inside it. It can be a historical artifact. It can contain annotations, physical characteristics, illustrations, paper, typography, and evidence of how people interacted with the work. Once an irreplaceable physical copy is destroyed, that object is gone. And The Guardian raises an even bigger question. What happens if this becomes normal? What if several AI companies begin acquiring and destroying millions or hundreds of millions of books? Who decides which books are disposable, and who protects rare or culturally important works? The Anthropic case, therefore, isn't simply a story about a company destroying books. It's about something much bigger. AI companies need enormous quantities of human-created information. Authors create that information. Publishers distribute it. And AI companies want to transform it into systems capable of generating new information at unprecedented scale. The law is now trying to catch up. The Anthropic case tells us that AI training and copyright piracy are not necessarily the same legal question. But Project Panama raises another question that the courts may not have completely answered. Just because something is legally permissible, does that mean it is culturally responsible? Perhaps the biggest irony is this. Anthropic wanted books because human writing was valuable enough to make its AI better. But in the process of building machines that can generate language, the company found itself at the center of a debate over how much of the human literary record should be treated as raw material. The future of AI may depend on data, but the question society now has to answer is, who owns that data, and what are we willing to sacrifice to obtain it? What do you think? Was Project Panama an ingenious way to build AI training data within the law, or a disturbing example of technology treating human culture as disposable? Let me know in the comments.